right, great. I'm going to get started. My talk was actually called Jehovah's Witnesses in Casablanca, but Jonah stole it, which is bullshit. But so I have a blank slide here. I'm Shafqat. I'm the CEO of NewsCred. We're one of the world's leading content syndication platforms. We work a lot with publishers and brands, so the topic of my talk is actually, how do we turn brands into world-class publishers? I'm sure you've heard this phrase so many times, not just today, but in the last week, in the last few months. It might throw up a little in your mouth, but that's why I put it on a big slide in red. But the reason why I did that is it's actually really, really important, and it's very real. Just for our company itself, it's been absolutely transformative, this movement. But along with the benefits, there's a lot of challenges, and we work with brands to help solve some of those challenges, and that's what I'll talk about today. So the reason why this movement has really taken hold is that brands are acquiring audiences at scale that we've never seen before. And not just acquiring audiences, but acquiring audiences across many different platforms. So if you look at kind of all the different places that a brand has to be, you start from their websites, from blogs, Twitter, social networks. I mean, just take social networks. Just when they figured out their Google or their Facebook strategy, Twitter comes along, and then they have to figure out their Twitter strategy. Then there's Pinterest, so they're like, all right, what kind of content do we need to put on Pinterest? Then there's the Pinterest of Pinterest. I just made that one up, but there's probably something like that. And there's just so many new platforms. And then you have to remember there's also the traditional marketing channels that always used to work, like email marketing. Then there's new types of advertising units that Jonah was talking about. And really, it boils down to one thing. It's like, what the hell do you actually say on all of these platforms? So you can say, yay, it's summer. Or I think I saw something from Bounty recently, which was, what do you guys do with the the empty roll once you've finished your paper towels? And there was like hundreds of answers, and the first one was, throw it away, question mark. So really, they need more interesting things to say. And I think even once you figure out what is it that you want to say, the next challenge is, all right, how do you get all of that content? Do you write it all yourself? Well, building an editorial team is very expensive. I know there's a lot of out-of-work journalists, but it's still difficult to hire all those guys, manage that team, and to scale that. It's very difficult to license all of that content because simply there aren't that many options before our company came along to license kind of interesting content. You could go to a traditional wire service and everyone's running the exact same piece of content. It doesn't have your voice and your tone. So then you think, all right, maybe I will get it written for me custom. But that's very expensive, and again, it gets difficult to scale, et cetera. So, I mean, it's difficult to produce high-quality content at scale, but if you can somehow manage to do that, and I'll show you examples of people who have, it really gives you a big opportunity. And this slide just outlines a few points. It sounds a little bit like fluff, but bear with me here because there's real examples for all of these. But I think the first point is instead of selling products and services all day long, you can now actually create more interesting, more engaging experiences. And what that means is you turn your customer base, instead of just a list of customers and their IDs and their addresses and zip codes, they actually become brand advocates that are talking about your products, that are talking about your services and sharing it with friends, and people love talking about amazing experiences with their friends. And then for more corporate brands, instead of just typical advertising, you begin to move into this area that a lot of the brands that we work with are focusing on, which is thought leadership. How do you appear as a thought leader in the space or in the domain that you work in? And then finally, just thinking about content. I actually don't really love the word content. I know there's smartasses out there that are thinking, well, the conference is called content, but it's actually we like to say journalism just because it kind of refers to a higher quality, more thoughtful, more authentic experience. So once you have this high quality journalism, you can actually start engaging in high quality conversations with your customers. I think I skipped through one. Okay. And finally, on the other side, we work a lot with publishers, and I think there's a bunch of publishers in this room. When this brands becoming publishers movement started, initially there was a lot of fear and a lot of doubts because the brands were dependent on publishers to reach audiences for decades. For hundreds of years, the way you reach an audience is you go to a publisher either through radio, through TV, through the New York Times, and all of a sudden they're getting bypassed because the brands are going direct to the audience. But there's an opportunity there for content creators as well. It's not all doom and gloom, and that's another thing that we've realized is we can help connect publishers so that even if Pepsi doesn't advertise on your site as much, you can start selling your content to Pepsi for their site or for their Facebook page or for their Pinterest page. And that's really one of the things that we help with, and it helps content providers with revenue that goes straight to the bottom line, new distribution, reach new audiences on platforms that you might not be reaching, and it helps build your brand as well. And so I'm just going to quickly talk about 5 things that we've learned. Most of these examples are ways that we either have helped. I think there are 2 examples of our own customers, but most of the examples are actually not our customers. I'll point out which ones are ours just so for disclosure. But the same things apply to publishers because ultimately a publisher is a brand itself. So depending on who you are, you can kind of take away the same lessons. So the first one is you have to tell a story that matters. And really all that means is people don't really care about the ad campaigns. They're not sharing ad campaigns. They're sharing the story in the ad campaign. And I think that's really important. And you can attract attention and build audience, but it's really important to have and to focus on storytelling. A brand that does this really well is Red Bull. I know Shane talked about Red Bull earlier. I was in LA about 3 months ago, and I was having coffee with the guy who runs editorial for Red Bull USA. There's 2 things that stood out. One is he said when he manages the Red Bull site, he thinks of Red Bull as a publishing site, and Red Bull, the energy drink, just happens to be the only advertiser that he has. So he keeps it extremely, extremely real by just focusing on amazing content that caters to his audience. And his audience, they're not necessarily all energy drinkers. His audience, they're skateboarders, they're surfers, they're turntablists, they're DJs. And so what they do is they have this concept called playground content. Playground content is all the things that are not about the drink. They're not even necessarily about the people who they sponsor. It's about what do those people do, who do those people hang out with. So they'll follow a skateboarder to tattoo parlors. They'll interview amazing DJs in New York, and that's the type of content that they create, and it's all about storytelling. So the second thing we learned is about the blurring of content in commerce. I think people just don't want to be sold to. They want the entire lifestyle to come with it. Mr. Porter is a great example. They're an offshoot men's high-end retail brand from Net-a-Porter. Excuse me. When you go to their site, it feels like a magazine. What's interesting is when you actually if you see something interesting, the link doesn't actually say buy, it says read and buy. Because they focus so much on editorial, they actually have a weekly magazine. They have an iPad app where if you hold it horizontally, you can see, horizontally, you can see models walking across a runway. If you flip it vertically, you can actually buy those products in an e-commerce page. So third is meeting audiences where they are. This one's pretty obvious. We're no longer stationary. I think Jonah calls them the waiting in line population demographic segment, whatever he called it. But it's very real. So we need to meet audiences where they are and attract their attention while they might be in line. I love this quote. It's from Bob Bowman, or Bauman, don't really know how to pronounce his name. But he says, web-based traffic will eventually be 0. It's all about mobile. The devices are simply too good. Your office is where you're sitting. Has anyone used the MLB at Bat app? I actually haven't. I don't play baseball or watch baseball, but it's an amazing, amazing app. These guys doubled down on mobile. They doubled down on the content that they put in the app. You can watch all live games. You can watch archives. You can watch news. You can get stats. You can get pitch count. I mean, it's just simply amazing, and they charge for it. This company, MLB Advanced Media, is going to make $600 million. They have 2 million registered users. This is a real business, but this brand just decided to be where their audience is, and it's all about mobile and iPad use for them. So keeping it affordable and sustainable, I think this is really important because you have to be smart about how you go about building and executing on your content strategy. We talk to a lot of brands and they dive in, they're like, oh yeah, we're so excited, we hired this entire editorial team, we got this amazing journalist from Wired or ESPN, but they don't realize how difficult it is. Pepsi is a perfect example. They're smart because, oh, by the way, this is a customer of ours, just disclosure. So they have on the Pepsi.com homepage, they have something called Pepsi Pulse. It's like a cheat sheet of pop culture with news and tweets and videos and images about what's going on in entertainment and pop culture right now. A lot of the content is licensed from us. A lot of the content is user-generated. Some of the content is original. Some of the videos are original. Some of the videos are shows that they're like Nicki Minaj puts on. So they really blend all of the content sources, and across all of those sources, the blended cost makes it actually affordable and scalable. In fact, I think they have every day probably hundreds of different types of articles or types of content going into the system, which would have been impossible with a team of journalists. Second one is Orange Telecom, also one of our customers. They also have an entertainment portal, but what they do is pretty amazing. For 2.5 years, they've had this portal. It looks amazing. It's very immersive. A human has never touched this portal on the editorial side. It's 100% algorithmic, driven by our API, but you would never guess because it's just, the algorithm looks at what are the top 10 artists today and then surfaces those images to the top and shows you kind of breaking news and stories about those artists, and as they start fading, other artists come to the top, and the whole thing just kind of self-runs. And I think it's another example of how you can scale something without actually investing huge dollars in the editorial strategy. And the final, fifth point, is you have to do something different to stand out, and you have to do something special. And the thing that we noticed is, if you can foster some sort of genuine community and you have to inspire action around something that's actually bigger than just your brand. A perfect example of this is GE. I think Jonah talked about it a few times. I'm pretty sure everyone here has heard the term eco-imagination, right? No? Yeah, okay, everyone's nodding. It's not even a real thing. Like, they made it up. It's crazy. But every single person, at least that has been exposed to these advertising campaigns, knows what it is. And I'm pretty sure the only reason people know about it is because we as humans aspire to some greater good, and we actually care about the environment, we care about sustainability, and we care about clean energy or electric cars or smart grids or whatever it is. There's something about taking care of this planet and being smarter about how we take care of this planet that resonates with people. And GE has done an amazing, amazing job at this. And this is a perfect example. And I think every brand, even Shell Shell or ExxonMobil, they're digging oil in Africa and God knows what they're doing. Even brands like that can do things that, at least get people interested and engaged because people care about bigger things than just the brand itself. And that was the fifth example, and since I have 40 seconds, since I am paying for the drinks along with the 4 other startups, just wanted to plug what we do. So NewsCred is the name of the company. We license content from over 1,000 sources around the world, most major English language publishers of note, full text, articles, images, and videos, and then we curate that content and license it out to brands and publishers. These are some of our customers. So you can see We work with some of the biggest brands in the world. And here are some of our content providers, and we have 1,000 more. My voice is about to get shot, so I'm gonna wrap up. If you guys have any questions, I can take one or two questions.